This is Kid Shriner, the voice of the Green Arrow.
This is George Newbern, the voice of Superman.
You are listening to the DCAU Review, hosted by Cal and Liam.
Streaming at DCAUreview.com and on your favorite podcast app.
The original Justice League has become a memory.
I am resigning from the Justice League.
What's going to happen to the League now?
We rebuild. From the ashes of that great conflict, a new team has arisen. A much, much bigger team.
Each of you brings something different to the table.
Old friends, new heroes. And as usual, plenty of bad guys jumping up to get beat down.
Calm down, and I'll let you go.
How about you kiss my ass?
Watch out, evildoers. There's nowhere to run. Because this year, they're all around you. The League is unlimited. An all-new original series starring every superhero worth cheering for. And then some. Justice League Unlimited.
Where am I exactly?
Among friends.
There's strength in numbers.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 278 of the DCAU Review. I am one of your hosts, Cal, and with me, my good friend, good brother, the man that runs our social media accounts. It's Liam. Liam, we have a landmark episode, not for the podcast necessarily, but certainly in the DCAU to cover today. It's all been leading up to this. We wrap things up here, hard to believe, with the final installment of the Cadmus arc. It's been several months and years coming, I guess, at this point, as we've stretched it out as long as we possibly could. But we are here at the zenith of the Cadmus story arc with today's episode review. Welcome to episode 278 of the DCAU Review.
And what better time to review this seminal episode than episode 278? You know, everyone says that's the big one.
You know, we at the beginning of the podcast, we were like, all right, if we're going to review Divided We Fall on one episode, it's got to be 278. It can be no other.
That's right. That's what everyone says. Yeah. No, that's just how it worked out. And hey, technically, this isn't even the season finale of this season of Justice League Unlimited. So
on there.
So it's it's here, and we're very excited to talk about it this week. Absolutely, it's not light on big important moments.
Yes, indeed. We'll have a lot to talk about this week, as we have the last several weeks. And we encourage you, if you're just tuning in here and you haven't listened to the prior 3 or 4 episodes where we Justice League reviews in particular, I'm not sure why you wouldn't have listened to those, but maybe you like to listen to them out of order. But you can, of course, always tune in the archive at DCAUreview.com on your favorite podcast app to check those out. Liam, before we get into our 4 categories that we'll break down the episode with today, we'll, of course, get the official Internet Movie Database synopsis for this week's episode, which originally debuted here in the States on August the 16th, 2005, meaning we, just like we have been all month long, been celebrating the 18th anniversary of these episodes debuting. And of course, before we get that IMDb synopsis, we will, of course, remind you, this segment is brought to you by the Pod Tower. If you like entertaining, funny, and DCAU-themed podcasts, do we have a YouTube channel for you? Head over to youtube.com/thepodtower today, and you will not only get the entire catalog of Tim Talk, which covered every single episode of the DCAU, you'll also get hilarious content from the Watchtower database folks as they cover with their podcast, Jump on the Batwagon, and then a little old podcast called the DCAU Review also has its entire catalog up there. All 277 prior episodes to this one, plus many, many bonus episodes. I think we're close to 50 at this point, bonus episodes. So head over to youtube.com/thepodtower today and subscribe.
That's right. So this is the synopsis for Divided We Fall, written by Dwayne McDuffie, directed by Joaquim de Santos, with music by Michael McQuistion and Christopher Carter, and animation by DR Movie Co. And that synopsis reads as such. The Justice League charter members must battle the combined Lex Luthor / Brainiac menace alone.
All right.
Now, I would say normally when we have one that's that short, it's bad. But the funny part is, I feel like it's not far off. It's a lot of punching in this one. This is our grand finale, and like every superhero story, as the big screen has shown us, whatever has come before, however cerebral the story may have been, at some point it's clobbering time, to coin a phrase. And here is this episode, and it is that, but we'll still break down the plot here. There's still plenty to talk about, including as we kick it off with a quick recap of last week's episode. Not the whole Ultimen Galatea invasion of the Watchtower. We skip over all of that and just get to that final scene where Lex is seemingly caught red-handed by the Justice League original 7 members and Amanda Waller, and then here comes Brainiac bursting out of his chest. And after our theme song, we get what I just think is like unbelievably detailed. This is one of those ones where like you had to explain this, and they give so much detail to how and why, and justifying things and justifying plot holes. This kind of feels like one of the Star Wars shows that comes after a movie people didn't like, where they're like, hey, we need to fix this. We need to fix this little thing. We need to say that the reason this happened is this.
Dude, that is messed up.
I don't understand what's happening.
You are under my control. I have lain dormant within you for years, Lex Luthor, subtly influencing your actions until we arrived at this point. Do you not recall my kidnapping you in this very building?
Yes. You forced me to build you a new body.
Kal-El destroyed that body, foiling my plans. In any event, I always have a backup plan. Consider, how could you have survived a point-blank blast from me, unless it wasn't intended to kill me? The beam carried a nanotech payload that inserted a microscopic, holistic copy of my program inside your body. Since then, I have steadily grown in strength, protecting this body until I could arrange my transfer into a more suitable one.
You cured my cancer, gave me super strength.
Your animal protein shell was insufficient for my needs. Improvements were required.
Hate to interrupt this special live performance of The Thing with Two Heads, but it's time to go to jail now.
What he said.
And we happened to cover over something we talked about in long time ago when we covered Ghost in the Machine, the Superman the Animated Series episode. As it turns out that when Brainiac installed himself into LexCorp's computers and kidnapped Lex, made him build him a new body, near the end of that episode, he does in fact fire an energy blast at Lex Luthor's back and knock him out. And it turns out that the only reason that didn't kill him is because it has, Cal, I know one of your favorite plot devices. If I have this correctly, a nanotech payload was hidden inside of this bolt of lightning that the robot man shot at Lex Luthor. And that's why Brainiac lives in Lex Luthor's stomach now.
That is correct. Yep. And by that nanotechnology, a microscopic copy of himself was then implanted in the DNA of Lex Luthor, which allowed him to remain hidden all of these years. I will say, let's not bury the lead. The very first line of this episode is the Flash looking at this disgusting amalgam of Brainiac and Lex Luthor and going, dude, that's messed up. Perfect way to start the episode. And then, honestly, everything that comes after this is pretty well encompassed in that phrase as well. But yes, the exposition machine is turned up to 11 here as we get at least better explanation. There's no somehow Palpatine survived. This is very detailed as to how each and every bit of Brainiac survived. We also get him revealing his plans. We get Luthor coming to the conclusion that his cancer, that if you remember from Injustice for All, that was mysteriously cured. We get Brainiac getting the credit for that happening. Also, the newfound superhuman strength that he seemed to have when destroying the Question, and I guess his superhuman speed also when he catches Batman's Batarang. All of that is linked back to Brainiac's hidden presence within Lex's body. And we get just what seems like hours of exposition. It is only like maybe 2 to 3 minutes, but it is a lot of exposition of an explanation as to what is going on, which feels like a bit of an overcorrection because we left the last episode going, what in the absolute hell is going on here? And then they were like, all right, we have to really get into the nitty gritty here to explain away how and why this is happening. So yeah,
it feels like one of those things where you came up with the idea whenever they made the decision to not have Lex put his brain in the Amazo body and to do this instead. It was like, all right, we're going to do this instead. Now let's work backwards to figure out how this makes sense. So it, like I said, I think it's okay. We'll talk about it. The voice acting certainly picks it up, as you mentioned. There's enough kind of fun interjections from the Justice League and from Lex, so they do their best to cover it. But yes, it is just a big old info dump here in our opening scene, and Flash again sums it up by telling Lex that it's time to go to jail, and Amanda Waller agrees and begins firing her laser pistol at Brainiac's face in Luthor's gut, and leaves quite a few holes in Lex's midsection. That's kind of a fun workaround to shoot a guy.
She hit him just in the robot part of his midsection.
That's right. 5 or 6 big bullet holes, but all in the robot part, so it's all good there. And and I'm sorry, I'm just reading the DCAU wiki, and it literally starts the paragraph on this scene off as, having had enough exposition, the League attacks Luthor and Brainiac. Good job. We poke a lot of fun at the DCAU wiki, but they have a good funny line once in a while. So at that moment, as it seems Lex and Brainiac have been taken down, he of course rises back up, heals his robot face, and sets off some sort of a energy blast or explosion that knocks all 8 folks out of the building, and everyone has to kind of scramble. And then and we'll talk about this more in visuals, obviously, but then it's just there a bunch of tentacles shoot out, and Superman's fighting Lex, and while Superman's fighting Lex Brainiac throws his tentacle arms into the building, and then tentacles shoot out of the building and eventually sort of take down the Justice League one by one. And Brainiac decides that here he's going to, I guess, kill and digitize the Justice League and turn them into data, and then begin to do the rest of that, do that same process to the rest of the world, as has been his mission statement since his first appearances in this universe. And thankfully, we have a guy who can phase through solid objects to save the day.
He remembers that he can phase through solid objects at the last second. Like, just as everybody is about to die, he's like, oh yeah, I can phase through this. And by golly, he does. And if you're there's some people, I'm gonna say this in a very PG way. There's some people that like tentacles a lot. And if tentacles are your thing, this is an episode for you to enjoy and watch, because it's just tentacles for this entire sequence. It's just tentacles growing out of the LexCorp building. They're like going into people's chests, and they're going after everybody and smacking them in the face, and they're getting cut off. And there's
tying people up.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Shaira's wrists up and stuff. Yeah, there's look, no judgment, but
I that's why I said some people like tentacles, and if you do like tentacles, this is an episode for you to watch and enjoy. That's all I'm saying.
Is there like a wiki tentacle? Like there's a wiki feet. Is there? Is there a thing where someone catalogs this stuff?
I wouldn't doubt it. It's the internet in 2021. 23. So yes, I'm sure there is. But yes, Jean, as you mentioned, realizes he can phase through the tentacle. That might be its own thing. Who knows? That phases through the tentacle and begins attacking Brainiac. Brainiac flees at once because he exclaims he was not prepared for this battle yet, and runs away, leaving the League to recuperate, searching for him.
You are defeated. Any unique information that dwells within you will be digitized. Your physical forms will be deleted. Such is the ultimate fate of this world. But for you, the end comes now.
I am so willing to wait my turn.
I was not yet prepared for this battle.
They are searching the ground in and around the LexCorp tower as he actually flies into LexCorp, somehow morphs. There's this whole thing is like, how is this happening? I don't know. They don't really explain it. The exposition all takes place at the beginning. They don't bother explaining how this happens, but he somehow morphs the LexCorp building into the giant floating Brainiac with tentacles head that we last saw actually in the Static Shock episode, the Big Leagues, right? That was the last time we saw something that looked similar to this, at least.
Yes, correct.
So we did have seen this a variation of this same floating Brainiac head, and of course it's been in the comics for and Super Friends for sure. So not the first time it's appeared, but it's the first time it's appeared here in the Justice League Unlimited series, at least. So the floating Brainiac spaceship head with tentacles attached begins taking off. The Justice League Leaguers are in hot pursuit, end up taking it down fairly easily, too easily, as Superman points out. As Batman points out, and Superman agrees. So they begin searching the wreckage, trying their best to find Brainiac. We cut down to the sewers. Of course, where else would they be? Escaping through the sewers is the Lex Brainiac hybrid, and we get more. It's not quite exposition, but it's definitely the revealing of Brainiac's plan, what he plans on doing, giving you a nice reminder that the Brainiac robot, as you mentioned, his whole goal is to amass knowledge, destroy the planet, and then move on to the next planet and do the same thing. That was way back in Superman the Animated Series. That was revealed to be what his whole character arc was, and it continues up through Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. So he reveals to Luthor that's his plan. Luthor, realizing that he's kind of getting his minutes are ticking down here. He's not going to have much time left because he's not really going to be of use to Brainiac at some point. Has to try and weasel his way out of this situation. And to the DCAU Wiki's credit, they mentioned it's very similar to the way that he does the same thing with Professor Ivo's robot with Amazo, where Amazo is about to kill Lex, but Lex uses his brain to outsmart him and spare his own life that way. So as Brainiac begins regaling him with what his goal is, he talks about how amassing knowledge, eliminating all of life, the end game. At that point, his programming will be complete, and there will be nothing else for him to do. Lex talks about how they're being combined together, that they could do more, create more. Lex has something as a human being that Brainiac as a computer / robot does not have, and that is imagination. I feel like you should put the SpongeBob. You got to put the SpongeBob meme in there. He's got imagination. So Lex, this convinces Brainiac that he should spare Lex and they should team up. We cut back to Amanda Waller, who's speaking with the Justice League. And they through their discussion, they're talking about how Brainiac is completely nanotechnology, and they believe that he's going to search for whatever remaining nanotechnology is available on Earth. And of course, the most powerful one being the Dark Heart, which The Justice League is happy to remind you that they destroyed, if you remember, big laser in the sky destroyed the Darkheart prior. However, of course, there was those spider robots left over that all of Cadmus came to collect.
No sign of Brainiac.
My ring can't trace him either.
Okay, he's weakened and damaged. He'll need to repair himself.
He may just dump Luthor and find himself a new body.
No, he'll head right for the highest technology available.
Higher than LexCorp? Then he'll go to Starlab.
He'll go to Cadmus.
Sure, he's all nanotech now, right? What's the most advanced nanotech on the planet?
The Darkheart. We destroyed it, but your people confiscated the remains.
We've never been able to get any of it to work again.
Are you willing to bet Brainiac can't?
Brainiac?
I have added this technology to my database. The nano-assemblers are already slave to my command routines. With but a thought, they will convert any raw material into whatever I choose.
Then we're ready to begin. Let me show you.
I have learned from my encounter with Darkseid that organic beings cannot be trusted.
I can't argue with that. But if you and I are one, truly one, trust won't be an issue, will it?
Agreed.
Brainiac brings up the fact that he once trusted a living being before, that being Darkseid, if you recall, at the beginning of Justice League, talking about how that went awry and when trusting Darkseid went awry. So he's not going to trust Luthor, but Luthor reminds him that since they're one being right now, he'll be able to tell his intentions, and Brainiac agrees. So he allows Luthor to do what he thinks should be done, which is to sort of amass this nanotechnology into a gold suit. That was his imagination. That was his plan. He's going to amass a giant gold suit from the nanobots, and from there we know that the Justice League's time is short because Luthor / Brainiac. What's the name? I know that they call him something. What is it? Is it Luthiac? You call him Brainy Luth? What did we settle on with this guy?
Lex Brainiac.
Lex Brainiac. Okay. Yeah, okay. The DCAU wiki refers to him as Luthor / Brainiac.
Correct.
All right, cool. So Luthor / Brainiac, just doesn't. You figure they could have come up with something that would have. There's just no way to combine those names.
Right. Yeah. Let's just refer to him as Lex.
Right.
As a shorthand, knowing everyone that's listening to this point will know who we're talking about.
We'll refer to him as Lex, featuring Brainiac.
Right. Oh, jeez.
All right. So at this point, the Justice League puts out a call back to the Watchtower, knowing that they're going to have a showdown with Lex featuring Brainiac going forward here. So they put out a all hands on deck call. Unfortunately, they quickly realize that the Leaguers up in the Watchtower are still recovering from the attack from the Ultimate. Hey, that finally gets a mention. We didn't get it in the recap, but we get a brief reminder here that did happen last week, that the rest of the Justice League was attacked on their space station. And I loved the little seed that we plant here, as Martian Manhunter mentions, that the transporters sometimes aren't even worth messing around with the time and investment. So maybe, you don't need to use them if you have your home base on Earth. Just a thought. Just a little seed being planted there. Mm-hmm. But so they also put out a call to the other Leaguers that were on Earth helping with the Cadmus recovery. We get a brief scene with Green Arrow, who mentions that they're about an hour out, so they know that time is not on their side. Liam, coincidentally, just by accident, that leaves us with just the founding 7 members of the Justice League to go it on their own to face Luthor in an unforgettable showdown.
Watchtower, send rapid response teams to the transmitted coordinates. We need backup.
That's going to be a problem, Jean. The Ultimate wrecked every Javelin in the landing bay, and the teleporters
are still down. They hardly seem worth the trouble sometimes.
All Justice Leaguers report to the transmitted coordinates immediately. This is an Omega-level alarm. All available members and associates respond immediately.
We're scrambling now, but at top speed, we're over an hour away.
I doubt any of the others can get here any faster.
Then the 7 of us will have to be enough.
My X-ray vision can't penetrate the walls, but I'm seeing a rapidly growing heat signature in the infrared range.
You don't need supervision for that. Can't you feel the heat?
That's right. And we'll certainly talk more about this in visuals, but suffice to say, Lex is beginning to build his grand machine that's going to destroy the world and collect all of its data in one single vague explosion, I guess. And as the Justice League arrives, Superman tries to reason with Lex, but Lex makes it clear that since they're merging, since Lex and Brainiac and the Darkheart all merged into one, there's no longer any sort of differing of opinions. They all want the same thing at this point. So at that point, Luthor conjures up, using the wonders of nanotechnology, conjures up some Brainiac drones, seemingly to fight the Justice League, but decides that doesn't quite have the personal touch, the imagination, if you will, that Lex has. And so he reconjures those bots into what else but manifestations of the Justice Lord. Even the Flash gets a Justice Lord this time.
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk about that in visual. And so then we get a scuffle between the real Justice League and the fake one, as the various fake Justice League members / robots begin to just shout their insecurities at their counterparts. But it doesn't quite work. We do get some good lines here. I think we'll talk about this probably more in voice acting as well. But suffice to say, Superman is having a little bit of a crisis again with his place in the world with this Justice Lord Superman robot. But right as he gets the upper hand, that robot transforms into Lex and asks if this is the part where he's going to kill him, which of course causes Superman to hesitate. But thankfully, Wonder Woman's there to step in and suggest they all sort of switch up dance partners for the rest of the fight here. Actually, Batman and the Flash had no problem. They each took out their doppelgangers, no problem. And I guess Jean did too, because we don't even see what happens to that one. But yes, Superman and Wonder Woman team up to destroy theirs, and Green Lantern and Hawkgirl also work out a little bit of their pent up aggression against each other by destroying each other's doppelgangers. So it's time. The Justice League's reformed. They're here, and it's time to take one last run at Lex, and they all immediately get knocked out. They get knocked down, except for Wonder Woman, who does in fact, as she seems to have disappeared from the battle, goes and grabs the javelin that they arrived in. And once again, for the second straight week, the javelin lives up to its name as she hurls it towards Lex's giant structure, blows it up. There's wreckage everywhere. Flash is seemingly the only one who's still conscious, other than Lex, featuring Brainiac, and sort of taunts Lex, but it's clear that Lex is just so powerful now that there's no stopping him, seemingly, as he conjures up out of his nanotechnology 2 soldiers to hold the Flash's arms, and conjures up a shotgun as he decides he's going to reenact the very vision that the Question had several episodes back in Question Authority. And he's going to kill the Flash. And as he says, this is in fact sort of making the prophecy come true, in that he's going to kill the Flash and then create Armageddon.
You lose.
Hardly. Look around you. The Justice League is completely defeated, and so are you. For all your efforts, you have but inconvenienced me, Spec. but I'm still just human enough to enjoy
taking my revenge. Looks like the question was right all along. I killed you, and then Armageddon. Right on schedule.
No!
Are you going to fight me, boy?
But the Flash rises to the occasion. This is really the first time. This is such like a staple of the Flash comics, and more recently the Flash TV show and the Flash movie and whatever, of him vibrating his molecules and also just running so fast that he like vibrates through different dimensions and stuff. But we never really saw him do this in the show before, so they kept a big bullet in their chamber for this bombastic finale, as the Flash seemingly at first is running away from Lex, but then we see he's basically winding up and going all the way around the world before returning to attack Lex, and we just see dashes across the screen. We'll talk about this more in visuals, as he's slowly ripping the Brainiac out of Lex Luthor and vibrates and tears all of it apart, ultimately freeing Lex from Brainiac. But in the process, he doesn't feel so good.
Yeah, to coin another phrase, right? Yeah. So he's begins to slip away. The rest of the Justice League come to his aid there at the end, as now Lex is lying completely naked in a crater and is just sort of there twitching, having had the Brainiac ripped out of him. As you mentioned, we see the Flash begin fading in and out, mentions that he's not feeling very well, and then disappears completely, to the horror of the rest of the Leaguers. Luthor never misses an opportunity to gloat or to rub the Justice Leaguer's face in it. Says, well, I guess I did kill him after all. So Superman flies over, lifts up naked Lex Luthor by his throat, holds him there, and it appears that the inevitable is about to happen after all, as it appears the Flash is dead. Superman, his eyes light up with anger as he's holding Lex by the throat. But at the very last second, right before Wonder Woman attempts to stop him, but Batman stops Wonder Woman from stopping Superman in a moment that I absolutely love. Speaks so much about all three of those characters on so many levels. Gotta love it. We'll talk about that maybe when we're breaking down the plot here at the end. But Superman, of course, stops short, mentions that he's nothing like his Justice Lord's counterpart. He may wish that he was like him on this day, but at this point, Luthor will face justice and not at his hands.
I was mistaken earlier. I think this is the part where you kill me.
I'm not the man who killed President Luthor. Right now, I wish to heaven that I were, but I'm not.
Superman, everyone! Flash is still alive. I'm in telepathic contact with him. His spirit is weak and growing weaker. But he's still here.
Flash! Shaira, it's so beautiful here. There's a force, a speed force. It's calling me home. I have to go now.
No, Wally! Take my hand!
I'm here too, Wally! We're all here! You've got to come back to us!
I can never go that fast again. If I do, I don't think I'm coming back.
And just like, speaking of Star Wars sequel references, just like when you thought Chewbacca was dead, but he actually wasn't, seconds later, we hear the Flash's voice calling out from the great beyond, and everyone around him. Well, actually, first Jean says that he makes telepathic contact with him, and then we hear the Flash's voice coming from the great beyond, saying that he sees a great light, a speed force, and suddenly a small portal opens up. Sha'ira shoves her hand into the portal, grabbing the Flash by the wrist, and then we get our super team up as everybody makes a human chain. They got to pull the Flash out of the Speed Force. They all link hands, every single leaguer, and eventually pull the Flash from the jaws of death. And he comes back out on the other side, exhausted, worn down, stating that he can't ever go that fast again, because if he does, he doesn't think he'll be coming back the next time. So
there's your exposition for why he doesn't just destroy every villain they ever fight for the rest of the series.
An explanation. Yep, absolutely. So from there, we get our we get Amanda Waller showing up to do the cleanup. She mentions that she's on the phone with the president. They call off the missile strike, so no nuking of Metropolis today or wherever. Metropolis today. They're gonna call off the nukes for now, and Cadmus will be responsible for cleaning up. We get a lovely postscript featuring the original Seven up on a podium on the outskirts of Metropolis, giving a speech, apologizing, led by Superman, saying that they were guilty of the act of hubris, believing that they were the ones that were entrusted with this and could sort of, in their own way, I guess, lord this type of power over, and believe that they could be the ultimate judges of everything. And they realize now that with their with the way that the Watchtower was used against Cadmus, that they can no longer be trusted with that. They're decommissioning the Watchtower and bringing everything down. And at this point, they are also announcing to all of the other Justice League members that are in attendance that they are disbanding the Justice League, that everyone else can go on their own and fight crime. But at this point, they can no longer endorse being a quote unquote army of soldiers to rule over, or to lord justice over the land. So it appears this is going to be the end of the Justice League, but who speaks up? The person you'd probably least expect in this situation speaks up. It's the old lefty, Green Arrow.
We want to thank the members of the Justice League for your courageous service. But in the future, you'll all have to act as independent agents. We're not going to be an army anymore. As of right now, we're disbanding the Justice League. This is the end.
Says who? You remember what we did yesterday? We saved the world again. You don't think that has any value? Well, think again, pal. The Justice League goes on, with or without you. Look, nobody can question your service or commitment to making things better. If you're quitting because you think you've already done your fair share, fine. We'll throw you a parade. But if you're quitting because it's easier than continuing the fight, then you're not the heroes we all thought you were. The world needs the Justice League, and the Justice League needs you, Superman.
So Green Arrow, in an impassioned, Rocky-like speech, it's not how hard you get hit, it's how hard you get hit. Keep moving forward. Reminds the Justice League that they're there for a reason, that they're there, that when they recruited him, they talked about the purpose of the League, and that purpose still exists. They just might need to tweak things a little bit, that's all. And that speech is enough to convince Superman and the rest of the Leaguers to keep the Justice League around, but he mentions that there are going to be some changes coming. There's going to be an embassy on Earth as opposed to lording over them from the sky. And we get a little brief interaction between Batman and the Green Arrow, where he quotes some Latin that translates roughly to "Who guards the Guardians?" or "Who watches the Watchmen?" if you will. And Green Arrow looks at Black Canary and looks back at Batman and says, "Don't worry, we got it covered." So that just shows you they'll keep the checks and balances and make sure that they see that as their duty to make sure that this absolute power does not corrupt the rest of the Leaguers. Absolutely. So we get our little ending there, and we get a nice little wrap up as we get a little bow with Lois and Clark at the end. They have a little interaction as Lois is writing an article at the Daily Planet about everything, mentioning that she mentions that while she's been tougher on Superman, which I don't remember her being that tough on Superman. Like I didn't quite get this whole dialogue bit here.
Yeah, this felt like it was trying to play off the Question Authority picnic,
right?
Where she kind of is talking to them about the space laser and how she's worried about his reputation and how he was how he was viewed by the world after everything happened with Darkseid. But no, there probably should have been maybe one more Lois scene an episode or two ago to maybe drive that point home a little bit. But it works well enough, I think. We'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, I felt like it was meant to be sort of a capper on that side of the story, since we sort of open this 4-episode arc with her.
That's fair. I had forgotten. So much has happened between these 4 episodes. It's hard to remember. Yeah, I mean that makes sense. So we get a bookend there of her saying that she's cutting him some slack. She mentions that he's only human, which she of course chuckles at and says, "You know what I mean." And Clark, who is standing by, nods in approval, and that's the end of the episode. So for all we knew at this time, this was the end of the series, minus the epilogue that comes next week. So this could have been the final scene of the Justice League, but it wasn't, thankfully. But that does wrap us up, at least for this arc. So let's talk about the breakdown here, Liam. As you mentioned at the top, a lot of fighting, a lot of punching. A lot of action takes place, and rightfully so. As you mentioned, this is a superhero cartoon for kids, so the finale of this has to be fists, right? Like you got to have a lot of action. This is the culmination of everything that's happened. You had a lot of talking, a lot of dialogue, a lot of this bureaucratic, espionage, government overreach discussions for episodes. Mm-hmm. So let's pay it off here with some good old fashioned comic book fighting, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and that is, like I said, there's other than our big sheets of exposition to explain how Brainiac is in Lex, and this episode is hornier than I realized. The tentacles, we got one guy and we got one villain inside of the other, and then Lex is naked at the end. Man, this is a hornier episode than I may have realized before this review. But but other than that, it is a lot of punching. The strong stuff is, I think, in the last couple of minutes from I think kind of mirroring, when Shayera leaves the League in Star-Crossed and Flash reaches out and hugs her before she goes, and then this time she pulls him out, like she gives him the hand this time. Mm-hmm. Like there's some nice parallels there. There's some, the original 7, the original 6 and Batman the part-timer coming in and having to save the day, together as a team, rather than having to be able to rely on the whole big army is cool. It's a fun setup for this, mm-hmm. what appeared to be this big bombastic finale. As a payoff to the whole arc, I'm not going to say I don't like this episode. Please don't.
Yeah.
Please don't sharpen your pitchforks. I like this episode a lot. Does it feel like it felt like, I think, because it always had to end with a superhero punch-up, mm-hmm. do we get a good answer to the question? I guess we do, in the sense that it all comes at the press conference at the end, where sure. Superman feels like, yes, we had too much power, and therefore we cannot act as a unit anymore because it's too much concentrated power in one place, so we're all walking away. Mm-hmm. And Green Arrow stands up and goes, yeah, but sometimes, and this is always my inherent thing with any when we try to, I feel like it's always a roadblock you run into when you bring in real world, all the things we've praised this arc for. Real world scenarios, whether that's big macro issues like foreign policy and government overreach and collateral damage and things like that, or whether it's smaller things like Twitter and Reddit's favorite topic about should Batman just put all his money into social programs instead of punching criminals. It's like, in a real world, yes, that would be a conversation to have. In this world, there's giant space aliens with ships that shoot giant lasers at buildings like twice a week.
Right.
So of course we need a Justice League.
Right.
Like, it's one of those questions where it's interesting. It's very interesting to open that, but I feel like you almost have to end it with a more traditional, like, super frenzy and adventure, because otherwise we need to show what value the Justice League has, which in this case is there is no one else. There is no one else that could stop a threat else. And that's where I think it does work, is where Green Arrow comes in at the end and goes, yes, we need to be here, we need to be doing this, but we need to be more accountable when we do screw up. So like I feel like there's a real thin runway to land this plane on, and we pull it off. But like I think I guess when you go from all of the sort of the broad political ideology that was discussed in the previous couple of weeks of episodes to, well, we need a Justice League because aliens and supervillains exist.
Right.
I could see that maybe that's like too simplistic or too clean of an answer. But then you're also running against, as you said, with the exception of Epilogue, which was the final episode of this second season, they thought this was it. They thought they were pretty sure they were done. They weren't sure they were getting another season, so they didn't want to leave anything unwrapped. They didn't want to leave anything, untied. So I also get that pressure of like, we want a satisfying ending, and as we do have to remind ourselves sometimes, it's still a show for children. So,
precisely.
So I think, like I said, it's a thin runway. I think with that press conference scene at the end and with the Lois and Clark discussion, they do stick the landing. But it does just devolve into punches and explosions for a lot of this episode.
Yeah, I surprisingly don't disagree with you. I came into this, and also I will preface this with saying I like this episode. I enjoy this episode. I think that remembering what this show is important context before we like get on our soapboxes and get out our monocles and talk about the highbrow of everything that the underlying themes of this show. It's looking at it and saying, cartoon first, sell toys and action figures and comic books 1 and 1A. Like these are the main purposes of this show. And then the writers, anytime they got to infuse this other stuff, these real world events, and talk about the human condition, as one of our recent guests talked about, that's sort of just like icing on the cake. It's something that we now as adults get to appreciate and see. I don't think it's fair for us to look at this, and I think that's exactly what you're communicating. It's hard. Well, maybe it's not that it's not fair. It's hard for us to fault this show for not ending with a finale that would be equivalent to an episode of The West Wing. This isn't Aaron Sorkin television programs that we're watching here. This is a cartoon for children, a TV Y7 cartoon for children. Like, okay, this isn't gonna end with like Congress regulating how the Justice League acts. Like, of course it's gonna be this fight, and then the heroes talk about quitting, but the guy who's been on their back about being too powerful says, actually, we kind of need you. Like that makes sense, because as you said, these are comic books. This is a comic book world where you follow the guy in the episode, the two previous episodes that's yelling about them for having the space laser in the sky. No one's going to watch that. Like, not one person would watch that for more than like 3 minutes. I don't care about this guy's everyday life. I want to see the people in the long underwear punching the bad guys in the long underwear. Like, that's the point of watching this show. So yes, breaking it down into that, it's a tough line to walk. I do think they walk the tightrope in including that stuff. If this episode ended with Lex being defeated and that's it, I think it would be a big letdown, because it does feel like you ignore all of these other themes that you talked about. I think the purpose of talking about those things in those episodes, though, we also look at this and think about this in a vacuum. It was things that we were experiencing that the writers were talking about, thinking about, looking at, seeing. These were things that were in the public conversation that they were like, hey, let's include this, because this is Dwayne McDuffie was passionate about it. He felt like this is something that he wanted to include in there. It was topical. It's important that we keep this in the thought process. Hey, isn't it interesting if we include these themes? And comic books have done that forever, including whatever the topical themes of the day are in their comic books. But at the end of the day, you can only do so much with men and women that fly and fight.
Absolutely.
Computers that are possessing, 12th level intellects. What else? What more can you want or ask for? I will say though, so soapbox, that one, kicking that away. I will just land with this by saying I ended up giving plot a 7 out of 10. And that is because I do think by going this wacky route of including Brainiac and Luthor, it's cool. They brought all this backstory in. You tie all of this into some of the original Superman stuff. Next episode is all about tying in the original Batman stuff. So it's really like, okay, if this is the end, we're giving this a send off and just bringing this full circle. We're including all of this stuff. This is sort of the end of Superman's arc. So we get this whole thing. Arguably, you could talk about it being a Superman arc, because it's about him coming to terms with he can't use his powers to the point where he controls everything. He still has to be a hero in this, and where that line is, right? So at the end, he comes to the decision he's not going to kill Luthor, and they're going to disband the Justice League because he recognizes that power can corrupt if it's not checked properly, and that responsibility, he sees the responsibility of being a hero as something, a different vision than what he had been acting upon, previously. So this is the end of that Superman arc. That's why we end the episode probably with him and Lois in the Daily Planet. Like, that's the end of their arc. This is Superman, the end of Superman's arc. So bring it full circle. Okay, great. We're including all this backstory, but it is very clunky for that first 1.5 acts, I would say. Stuff happens that should probably have some explanation. Like, how does Brainiac turn LexCorp's building into his brain? I don't know. His brain head. Nanites, I guess. Sure, nanotechnology. Okay.
Right.
Explain what that means a little bit so I understand how the building shifted into the Brainiac brain. I
also don't think they do a great job of. So Brainiac already has nanotech of some kind. And obviously the Dark Heart, I guess, is more advanced nanotech, but they don't really explain it, because like he just slaps the building with his tentacle arms, and then tentacles shoot out, and then a big robot shoots out, as you mentioned.
Right.
So it's like, well, if he can do all of that while like half alive inside Lex's body, I guess that's it, because he's not fully formed yet. That's why he needs the Dark Heart in that moment. But it's like, I don't feel like they do a good enough job explaining what the limitations of Brainiac before the Dark Heart are, and then he's just kind of magic after they merge with the Dark Heart. It's like the Dark Heart was like the spiders and stuff. They were just like, you killed one and two more grew out. Like, it was a Hydra thing,
right?
And then it was a literal heart at the end of that episode. And so I don't know, it doesn't feel like nobody had telekinesis in the Dark Heart, but I guess you're just combining Brainiac's already vague set of powers with the Dark Heart's vague set of powers, and you get this. Like it's fine,
right? Right.
And
if you think too hard about it, it starts to come apart, which is why like looking at those first two sequences, it's like, there should have been a little bit more substance here, because you're already asking me to like suspend disbelief within my suspending of disbelief. So this is stretching it a little bit too thin here. So yeah, that's why I gave it a 7 out of 10. I think it's a little bit clunky at the beginning. I think the final act is fantastic, even if I don't quite understand like how punching separated Luthor from Brainiac also, but
vibrated the molecules of Luthor's body, and he vibrated the molecules of Brainiac into the Speed Force.
Sure.
I don't know.
That sounds like a good explanation, but I wish I kind of had that explanation as to what happened.
Right.
We don't know. Like maybe they thought they might use Brainiac again in the future, just in case they didn't want to say he destroyed him completely. But we also don't understand. It's like, well, it's just Luthor now. Okay.
Yes.
But the emotional impact of the Flash scene, coupled with them saving the Flash, with the final speech, Green Arrow kind of coming back around, getting back on the team, being Team Superman again, and then that cute little scene with Lex and with Clark and Lois at the end, I thought was really strong. So that brought the number up from I think where it would have been if it was just the opening stuff for me. What about you?
Yeah, so I gave it an 8 out of 10. And I think the reason mine is 1 point higher is because of the moment. You already touched on it briefly in our recap, but where after Lex is lying naked in a pit and he's still kind of taunting Superman and saying, look at that, I did kill him.
Mm-hmm.
Superman picks him up and you see the eyes glow, and you have that moment, and you could have had Batman or Wonder Woman talk him down. You could have had Flash reappear first and leave some ambivalence as to what was going to happen there. But I really appreciate that they took a very firm stance. They did not leave it ambivalent. Funny that word comes up later. Superman was not going to kill Lex. This Superman would not go there, and he never would. And as someone who really loves this character, that moment is so important to me.
Yeah.
That he goes to the edge. He's not a blank slate. He's not perfect. He has the urges. He has the frustrations that any person with rational thought would. He goes to the edge, but he, of his own volition, not because his friends talk him down, not because Flash isn't really dead, he makes the choice in that moment when no one would have blamed him to go the other way. He still sets the example, and he still does the right thing, and that's Superman to me.
Yeah.
That's one of the best Superman moments across any of these shows that we've covered, and it made me a little bit emotional watching it today. Like, it's just that's what that character should be. Like, people talk about being an ideal of hope and optimism and things like that, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it. This is that moment for Superman, I think, is so important that they put that in, and that they answered the question definitively. This is not the Injustice Superman.
Yep.
This is not the Brave New Metropolis Superman. This is not any other evil alternate universe Superman. This is our Superman. Wouldn't do that because it's not in him. It's not who he is.
Yep. Absolutely.
And that's perfect. That's as perfect as it gets for a Superman moment for me. So for that reason, I kicked it a 1 point higher to 8 out of 10.
No, it's a good sale. And I think thinking about that as you're talking about that, it also shows the character growth, because albeit it's a somewhat different foe that he's fighting, this isn't that far removed from when he lobotomized Doomsday. in the volcano. So even the argument could have been made, he wasn't going to kill Lex. He could have just lobotomized him. He could have just, he could have just made it so that he's a vegetable for the rest of his life. But even that, he's like, nope, I'm not doing that. Like I recognize my role is not to decide at this point what happens to you. That's not I'm too far in this. And because he's inherently good, like that's the whole thing with Superman. He's inherently good. And what sets him apart from everyone is that he makes that decision in that moment. So I love that. I love what the little thing that they did there. I mean, it also shows Batman's character, also talks about Batman's character. He trusted, like, the reason why, I guess we can start at Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman's desperate because she cares so much about Clark. She doesn't want him to do this. She knows she's going to take the role of stepping in there, taking the bullet. No, you're not going to do this. Batman knows Clark better than everybody else on the team, trusts in that moment he's not going to do it. And it needs to be seen by everybody here on this team, and Lex for that matter, that he isn't. And it needs to be done for Superman. Superman needs to know that he wouldn't do it. So that whole little sequence there, very underrated, like little dynamic that's happening between all three of those characters. Super, super cool. Loved it. All right, Liam, let's move on to our next category, which will be animation and visuals. DR Movie Co., once again, responsible for this week's animation, directed this week by Joaquim Dos Santos, written by Dwayne McDuffie, as we talked about at the top. Couple things here. We did have the gigantic tentacle brain robot Brainiac, as I said, make its reappearance here. We did see something similar to that, as we mentioned in the Big Leagues episode of Static Shock. I was just curious. I was like, all right, I know that he was a green guy in the comics for a long time. And then I remember like the Superpowers / Super Friends action figures, that they had a Brainiac figure that was like the robot with the brain. I was like, when did this particular version of Brainiac come about? And happened, I guess, in the early 80s. I was curious who's responsible for deciding that he was going to look like that. It actually happened during a Marv Wolfman run pre-Crisis in the 1980s on the Superman book. But credited for coming up with the design, or at least the initial design hitting the page, was an artist by the name of Ed Hannigan. Gil Kane was also working with Marv Wolfman on the book at the time, but Hannigan was credited with that design. So I always love that Brainiac design. I don't know what it is. Something about that. It's very Terminator-esque, obviously. I think they did their best to kind of play off of that a little bit more with giving him the red eyes and the deeper eye sockets for the brain head here. So definitely inspired by that. As far as I will just briefly touch on what I didn't like, Liam, and then I'll toss it over to you for what you didn't like and what you did like. But I did not think that the characters stayed on model for the majority of the episode. People looked very weird and angular. Lois Lane in that last scene was very distracting. Her like nose kept changing shape and her eyes were kind of looking in different directions. It just looked very, very sloppy. There were some dynamically incredible sequences, especially during the tentacle building scene, stuff like that. So plenty of stuff to appreciate visually, but I just felt like Sha'ira looked off model. The characters, Batman and Superman looked odd at different times. Just that took me out of it in a couple sequences because I'm like, oh, what's going on here? Why do these characters look this way? Amanda Waller also must have had some sort of like lap belt surgery or something in between episodes because she looked super svelte in that one fight scene. So a little bit inconsistent as far as the character models are concerned. Left me feeling a little distracted in a couple of the sequences. What did you like? What did you not like? What stood out for you for the visuals and animation?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to feast on. I don't disagree with anything you said. I definitely think character models were a little bit of an issue in this episode. But as far as things that I liked, Yeah, that opening sequence where they're fighting the big Brainiac head robot or spaceship in the sky is pretty good. I thought a pretty good integration of the CG with the traditional animation, and the shot of Green Lantern and Superman are kind of cutting through the center of it with the heat vision, and the laser beam is a pretty neat touch there. Everyone kind of gets a fun one or two fun kind of visual things. The Jean phasing through and pulling the wire out of his chest, and then going and pulling all of the wires out of Brainiac is kind of a fun sequence. Wonder Woman throwing the javelin at the device is really cool. And then the Flash bit at the end. It's funny because I know they always talked about how, I know I've heard Bruce Timm say that he never felt like they really got a good visual representation of how fast the Flash is supposed to be on this series, or at least he never felt like they did. But that sequence, at least when you're showing him go, light speed almost to take down Lex and Brainiac at the end, that sequence is pretty fantastic. And showing it kind of from his perspective, you get like a POV shot where you're just very quickly zipping through all these different backgrounds, and then you see him almost literally turn into a bolt of energy as he's running. There's some very cool visual tricks I thought they pulled out to show off the speed, or when he's running by and then all the cars from just like the I don't know, is that gravity, centrifugal force, whatever it is, just all of the energy he's expelling as he runs past, just throwing the cars aside and all of that, and making like cracks in the gravel as he's running is a really cool sequence there. And then it's a little as we talked about, it's a little bit it's a little hokey, it's a little cheesy, but the six Leaguers all joining hands to pull Wally out of the Speed Force is a pretty great visual as well.
Oh yeah, that's a little cliched, little silly to think about, but it's the most powerful moment of the entire episode, showing that they needed each and every one of them. The icing on the cake is Batman linking hands at the end with Wonder Woman to kind of give the last final pull there. So yeah, it's a visual representation for a children's cartoon of teamwork, right? Everybody holds hands.
Absolutely. It's very Ninja Turtles, Power Rangers. But speaking of which, I wondered if there was also a little bit of what's it called? Krang, the alien guy who sits in the stomach of the robot, and in the original Ninja Turtles cartoon.
That's it's a good pull.
I don't know if I didn't see anything that specifically said that, but maybe it's just because it's the face in the middle of the stomach that made me think of that. But yeah, it's like a Terminator Krang in the middle. That original design with everything bursting out of Lex, if we didn't talk about that last week, is pretty strong. And then the weird like gold I don't know, that gold Brainiac Lex design is kind of funny to me. Like I don't dislike it. It's just like it's just all gold with a little bit of the blue, which I guess is the cover of Brainiac's head, and then but you got like an elongated Lex head, so you got like the length. His head is the length of Brainiac's, but he has Lex's face on there. Like it's a very wacky design that I enjoyed as well. And then of course we also have the Justice Lord robot sequence as well, which is pretty fun as well. Seeing that,
as you mentioned, we get our first look at what a Justice Lord's Flash looks like, and of course it's the Reverse Flash.
That's right. Yeah, he gets the little red armbands. Like all of the Justice Lords have those two circles of around their thing to give them some sort of uniform look. But yeah, otherwise he's just kind of the classic Reverse Flash look with the yellow suit and the black and red emblem and all that. So that was a fun inclusion here, because we do get to see a lot of the rogues in the last season of Justice League, but we never really got a ton of Flash lore or a ton of Flash villains showing up. So that's a fun little Easter egg of inclusion here as well.
Absolutely. I will refer. So we talk about the DCAU wiki every single week. It's usually, it's hit or miss with what information is added there. It's all publicly sourced, so it's not exactly fact checked, but I did have to chuckle there. The production inconsistencies, there's about 15 things that they list here. That's an exaggeration. It's like 7, but one of them I was just like, someone took the time out of their life to type this and put this into an article, seconds that they will never get back. And I just took time out of my life to read this that I also will never get back. And now I'm about to read this on here, time that all of us will never get back. So let us all enjoy that as I read this. It says, when Superman is knocked back into a vat by the android Superman, he crackles with electricity, yet there is discernible reason why as he doesn't crackle until after hitting the vat, and it is merely dented without exposing the inside. So that's the DCAU wiki for you for this week. I will mention we would be remiss not to go down the list of leaguers that are in attendance at the end here. We'll go through them at a flash-like speed here. We have Adam Smasher, Aztec, Buona Beast, Black Canary, Booster Gold, Captain Atom, Commander Steel, Creeper, Crimson Avenger. Also, some of these were present on the Watchtower also, so they may not be in the crowd scene. Back to the list. Crimson Avenger, Crimson Fox, Dr. Fate, Dr. Light, Dr. Midnight. We got 3 doctors this week. Elongated Man, Fire, Gypsy, Hourman, Huntress, Ice, Metamorpho, Mr. Terrific, Nemesis, Question, The Ray, Red Tornado, Rocket Red, Sand, Shining Knight, Stargirl, Starman, Stripe, Supergirl, Vibe, Vigilante, Vixen, Wave Rider, Wildcat, Zatanna. And also in the crowd were Snapper Carr, Summer Gleason, Jimmy Olsen, and of course, Lois Lane. So those are
Chen. I was looking for her. I didn't see.
Or Ron. What's Ron's last name?
Ron Troop.
Ron Troop. Yeah, no Ron Troop in the background. You could have had a lot of fun with that, but I guess they did enough. Summer Gleason makes an appearance. That's pretty niche. But yeah, so. As far as animation, I will just piggyback on what you said. The flash sequence is really, really fun. For the people that love tentacles, that tentacle scene is pretty dynamic. Like there's a lot of fun that's happening there. The Leaguers are running away from all of these gigantic limbs reaching out and trying to snatch them. I thought the team up sequence between Jon Stewart and Amanda Waller was pretty awesome. They find themselves back to back, and Jon creates a giant energy bubble around them that eventually expands and explodes. And then Amanda Waller has to check on him afterwards. I thought that was fun. The fight between the Justice Lord's androids and the Leaguers are great. The visualization of Jon Stewart. Talk about them having fun with destroying robots and lifeless beings. He just takes a giant green energy hammer and just beats the tar out of the Hawk Girl android. And then Shaira comes up and she takes her mace and knocks the head off of the Green Lantern android. And she hit a home run. That was a 350-foot bomb. She just knocks his noggin off, and then
she pimps it too. Like she stands there and kind of watches it with the mace on her shoulder. Like,
yeah, she was pretty proud of that shot, deservedly so. But yeah, overall, I don't think there's much else that I missed because there's as far as like the visually interesting moments here, but yeah, I'd say overall it's fine. The character models took me out a little bit. I was a little disappointed with that, but there is a lot of action that I feel that makes up for it. I didn't hate the CGI version of the Brainiac head. Felt like they did a little bit of cell shading to try and disguise it a little bit. So overall, I went with a 7 out of 10 for my animation and visuals. What about you?
Yeah, I'm a little bit higher. I went a 9 out of 10. I think it is really strong. I don't disagree about the models being off. I think that may have kept it from a perfect score for me. But yeah, I just think the action sequences are so dynamic. There's so many things happening. Joaquin DeSantis, we've talked about his strength as director being these big action brawls, and a lot of them I feel like it's been with smaller groups though. Like I remember in the Cat and the Canary, there's some really cool stuff with Black Canary and the way her kind of the choreography of her fight is really intricate. Whereas this is just wall to wall. Again, it's tentacles and there's leaguers everywhere, and there's so many moving parts, and the fact that it's one looks really good, and two, you can tell what's going on. The whole time with everything that's happening is pretty incredible. And then just that final sequence of the Flash, I think is worth a couple points on its own. So very strong score from both of us, not unexpectedly.
That's why they call him Dr. Fight, according
right.
to the DCAU wiki. All right, let's move on to our next category, which is going to be music. Once again, supplied by the Dynamic Music Partners for this week. Boy, howdy. Lots of music involved in this. There were a couple of memorable spots that we can highlight here. You do get of course, big battles require big music accompanying them. And I think right off the bat, right after the Flash kicks us off with the "Dude, That's Messed Up" line, we get some like weird science fiction, what is happening, experiment gone wrong, background music as Brainiac is giving his exposition. Not necessarily, I didn't quite pick up the classic Brainiac theme out of it, but it's the same vibe, maybe with just like a horror twinge to it. So we get that. We get the big fight happening. There's music that's happening obviously during the big fight between the Leaguers and the Tentacles and all of that. And I thought that the music as they pursue after the giant Brainiac head is revealed and they're in pursuit of that, the music kind of really kicks in, and it wasn't like a recognizable theme or play off of any of the main themes that I necessarily recognized, but it's real intense. It drives it home. It gets real. It becomes almost the main focus of that particular scene in that moment. So I liked that particular piece of music composition. And then I think there's two additional moments specifically we'll probably both touch on. But did you have anything that stood out to you, maybe other than the more recognizable parts or memorable moments?
I think a lot of them we can touch on the character themes and stuff in a moment, but I think it was mostly the mix. Like we got a fair amount of the JLU music. We certainly got electric guitar and synthesizers, but there's also a lot of, I thought, more season 1 and season 2 original Justice League music mixed in with more like horns and more fanfare and more like an epic, more traditional orchestral music brought in as well for some of it. And they kind of fused that together in a very interesting way. And I think, like you said, there's little elements at the beginning there when Brainiac is explaining everything. You get this very sort of eerie, ominous feel to everything as well. So and the familiar character moments and themes, I think that's just the blending of maybe the traditional DCAU music with still bringing in the more maybe in moments where it felt more impactful, bringing in the big screeching electric guitars. I think they made for a good. Sometimes when you mix those two together, sometimes it's better to leave one or the other. But I think in this case, mixing it together was actually a big plus because it gave it an epic scale in some of these big fight scenes, but you still had the punctuation with that real crunchy electric guitar to let it set in as one of the big moments of the episode.
No, I'm with you completely. The reveal of the Justice Lords, you get the Justice League Unlimited theme played, but it's definitely it sort of veers off at the very end in a very minor, like off kilter type version of the theme. I really like that. But I think the thing that continues to, anytime I watch this episode, the thing that continues to emit a reaction from me is the music that's played during the Flash sequence. Luthor taunting him and him seemingly running away. And then the music just starts to swell, and he hits Luthor for the first time. And Luthor's, like, the facial reaction that Luthor has as the punch connects. You see, like, the first separation between Luthor and Brainiac. And then he disappears again, and he comes back, and the music just starts to swell. Like, that whole sequence is done so well. Every time I watch it, I get goosebumps. Every time. It's
Absolutely.
like so good. Yeah, and then obviously when it comes to the very end and he disappears, and then they reconnect with him. You have the the ominous music that plays after Luthor thinks that he killed him, and is Superman going to kill Luthor? And then once we get the reappearance, the sort of linking of arms of everybody, there's the swelling of the music there as they finally pull the Flash out, and it's sort of the song or the theme sort of descends at that point. But that whole sequence alone was like,
Absolutely.
right, I don't have a choice. I'm giving this a perfect 10 out of 10 just for that sequence alone. Like, the other stuff's just icing on the cake. Like, that was chef's kiss. Really, really good.
Yeah, absolutely. I gave it the exact same score for a lot of the same reasons you just mentioned. That whole Flash sequence is amazing. One or two other minor notes you already mentioned, the JLU theme being played in a very different key when the Justice Lords show up, when there's that sequence where sort of everybody else is knocked down, and then Lex asks, "Where's Wonder Woman?" and we sort of see her rising with the javelin in her hands, and they sort of meld the Wonder Woman theme elements of that with some of that JLU theme as well, and then you bring in the big crescendo for the explosion. I thought that was very clever as well. There's a lot of nice moments there, and then bringing that JLU theme back a little bit when they're all pulling Wally out of the Speed Force at the end is also very good. And it's good. And one of the choices I think they made, and this is ultimately I think a sign of why these great composers worked on all of these series for so long and sat under the learning tree of the great Shirley Walker. One of the things they also knew was when they didn't need to score a scene, and that final little epilogue, not that one, the epilogue of Lois and Clark in the Daily Planet, there is no music in that scene. And I thought that was a really great choice because it allows, as we'll talk about in a moment, just the two voice actors to give all of the emotion and to have this kind of nice, quiet, peaceful ending to what has been such a dramatic and overarching story for these 2 seasons of Justice League Unlimited and beyond, as we've talked about. So the choice of when to play and when not to play sometimes, as we've said, is more important as well. So I thought a nice choice there to kind of lay out for that final scene as well. So yes, a 10 out of 10 for me as well.
All right, Liam, man, hard to believe it. We are in the final category for the final episode of the Cadmus story arc here. So let's bring it on home as we talk about our small but mighty voice cast here of important people here. It's really it's a who's who for not only this episode or for this show, but also, as we mentioned, there's some cameos by some characters from other shows. So let's go ahead and talk about this week's voice acting.
Absolutely. So in very minor roles, we do have Robert Forster returning as the president. And we have, of course, the great CCH Pounder. We're gonna do a character spotlight on probably Amanda Waller and the whole Cadmus arc at some point the future. So this will not be the last time we talk about her. She doesn't get a lot to do in this last one, but she does kind of get to put a little button on things where she has the opportunity to let the president call in an airstrike, and she talks him down from it. I think it's a nice little button on her perhaps learning a lesson through all of this as well.
She's in a different place than where she was when just last episode when she jumped the line and sent the Ultimen in to fight the Justice League.
Absolutely. So she learned a lesson. But also in the episode, briefly, we do have Dana Delaney as Lois Lane right at the end there, and her playing off of George Newbern. Like we talked about a few episodes ago when we reviewed Question Authority. Not her Superman, not the one she worked with for several years on her show. And there's not a lot asked of her, but I do think, like I said, making that as sort of a bookend to that conversation that Superman and Lois have a few episodes prior, having her sort of just express to Clark now kind of how she looks at it and how she sort of views the Justice League after the latest round of heroics and after the press conference. I think is never going to complain about hearing Dana Delaney as Lois Lane in this episode.
Of course not.
But elsewhere, of course, we do briefly but impactfully, we do have Ken Shriner as the Green Arrow. This not only puts a button on the arguments that Green Arrow and Superman had in previous episode, it's full circle back to the very first episode of this series, when Green Arrow asks, what am I doing here? Why am I on this place when you have people like Superman and Wonder Woman? Why do you need a guy like me? And Batman tells him, because we need someone to keep us honest, to keep us in check, to remind us of what it is we're supposed to be doing here. And he gives that speech to Superman, and the interaction between Mr. Shriner and Kevin Conroy as Batman, as you mentioned, the who guards the Guardians line thrown out there is great, because that really does put a button on. It's another question, another kind of funny meme question that you will see thrown around a lot on on the Twitters and Reddits and things like that. It's like, why do we need a guy that could shoot arrows on a superhero team that has guys that can fly and shoot lasers out of their eyes and whatever? It's like, well, this is why. They and Mr. Shriner's performance, as it has been throughout all, pretty much every appearance he's had in these first two seasons, he brought it here. And again, he's got about 40 seconds in this episode, but boy, does he make them count.
You guys can handle this. I've got work back in Gotham. You've got my number.
I think so.
Quis custodia ipsos custodies.
Who guards the Guardians? We got it covered.
Yeah, like I said, I literally wrote down, I was like, Green Arrow gives the Rocky speech. Like, he's got to give the pump up speech to Superman and the rest of the Leaguers as to why they're needed. Like, hey, like this is what we do. Like, this is what you're here for. Like, hey, if you wanna take your ball and go home, by all means. I love it. He's like, we'll throw you a parade. Like, great, but if you're quitting because you think that you need to in a self-righteous huff, like, let's not do that. You're still needed around here. Tremendous. Every line that he delivers in that little particular speech he gives is really strong. And as a character that that didn't have a ton of lines for this particular episode, you never know when things were recorded or what have you, if it was all recorded in one session or if they brought him in just for a single session for this episode. But either way, he didn't have a ton of lines for this particular episode, but that did not dampen his passion and his ability to deliver that particular set of lines for the speech. So yeah, double thumbs up for Mr. Shriner.
Absolutely. And elsewhere, before we get to our main leaguers, we of course have our two main villains of this episode. And what a pair, as they always are when they interacted in previous series. Getting the band back together here, we have Clancy Brown as Lex Luthor and Corey Burton as Brainiac. And a fun thing is that most of the dialogue is said by both of them. I mean, we do have that conversation, as we mentioned. It's very exposition heavy in the first scene. The scene where they're walking in the sewer, I think, is a lot of fun, where Lex is still kind of, even at this point when he's had his body taken over by another worldly robot, the wheels are still turning. Obviously, Clancy Brown not surprisingly doing a great job there. But then, yes, every line for the rest of the series, it creates an interesting dynamic where they're saying everything in unison, which is a credit to the sound design, because you could still very audibly hear Corey Burton delivering those lines in the very monotone Brainiac voice, and the very just dripping with arrogance and this lust for power that Lex has always had, that's now seemingly realized in this moment. Shock of all shocks, Corey Burton and Clancy Brown do a great job in this episode.
You mean two incredible voice actors in their own right, when you combine them into a single voice, are just absolutely fantastic. Yeah, it's kudos to them in deciding like how they were going to do this, that they weren't going to, you could have done voice direction to have Clancy Brown sort of mimic the cadence of Corey Burton in the sort of robotic fashion, or in vice versa. You could have given a little bit more character to the Corey Burton voice. But the fact that they were like, no, we're going to have you deliver your lines exactly as you would normally, and we're just going to layer them on top of each other to give you this hybrid voice. Brilliant decision. I don't know if that we credit that to Andrea Romano as the idea or what have you. But either way, the fact that they were the sound designer, whoever decided that was extra points and kudos for that, because you have two of the goats and then they're layered on top of each other. It's mind blowing how fun that whole idea is. That, all right, these characters are combined at this point. Let's just have them both deliver the lines.
Absolutely. Yeah. Really, really great touch there to do that. Yeah. Credit to Andrea Romano and everyone else working here for there. And then, we have our main Justice Leaguers. We already touched on a few briefly. We'll just run them all down and then we can talk about what stands out. But we have Phil Lamar playing Green Lantern and Steel and Justice Lord Green Lantern. We have Carl Lumbly as the Martian Manhunter. We have Michael Rosenbaum as the Flash and Android Flash. We have Susan Eisenberg as Wonder Woman, Kevin Conroy as Batman, Maria Canales-Barrera as Shaira, and of course as Android Hawkgirl, and of course George Newbern as Superman and Justice Lord Android Superman as well. This is, like we said, it's a lot of punching, so there aren't a lot of moments, but I think, like we said, that last 4 or 5 minutes from George Newbern's I'm not the man who killed President Luthor, as we talked about, that's a very special scene. Him playing off of Clancy Brown's Lex, who has been pushing his buttons for years, really, but even just in these more recent episodes, going back to the Clash episode with Captain Marvel and all of that, like George Newbern giving this moment of, you still feel the righteous anger in his voice when he's giving that speech. He's not shaking it off like it didn't hurt him, it didn't frustrate him. He doesn't still maybe see himself or want to think of a world where he could have crossed that line, but he knows in this moment he's made that decision that he will not cross this line. And it's a tour de force again, even though it's mostly punching. I think the moments for George Newbern especially, and then also Maria Canales and of course Michael Rosenbaum, also a lot to show for their time as well.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you. I don't think there's much to add for your comments about Mr. Newbern's performance. Like, it's great. It's that the emotion that he has to convey in the various different parts here, especially after the sort of the restrained anger of holding off on killing Lex, and really driving home the fact that he is angry. He wants to kill Luthor, but he's not that person. Like, he wishes he could want to kill Luthor, I guess.
Yes.
Drives home. So, Michael Rosenbaum, I guess I should have thought about this when we were talking about, when I was talking about, like, they decided this was the Flash's story arc. Well, the idea that the whole thing hinges on whether or not the Flash lives or dies, I guess that really does make him one of the main focal points of this whole storyline. It's just not necessarily, it's not in the forefront for the last like 2 episodes, until we get to the idea that, we have the literal scene played out with the shotgun and such, that they're going to kill the Flash. So Michael Rosenbaum's performance as the Flash, he gets that, gets some funny lines, as we talked about, as per usual. He plays off of himself as the Android Flash, that he doesn't really have the ability to like call out any insecurities other than what like we assume it's not like the insecurities from a Justice Lords episode, because he didn't have a Justice Lord's doppelganger, as we talked about. So this is all just general insecurities that the Flash himself may have based on his age, his skill set, the fact that he's not as mature as everybody else on the team, stuff like that. So playing off of himself is really fun. But that final sequence of him coming back and him being like drained from being in the Speed Force, talking about not being able to come back, I thought that was pretty strong too. And even Miss Canales also, I think her performance in reaching out to the Flash in that, I liked that. Her little brief interaction with Phil Lamar as they're joking back and forth about their relational past. You got to love that.
Absolutely.
So solid performances all the way around. I think the strongest coming from Mr. Newburn, more than likely. Even Kevin Conroy get some good brief dialogue in there also.
And we'd be remiss not to talk about the implications of Batman and Wonder Woman's little flirtation at the press conference.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, yeah, they have a nice little interaction where she mentions the fact that she might have his phone number in case he's needed. He's got to go back to Gotham because remember, he's a part-timer.
That's right.
Part-timer. But Wonder Woman might have his phone number, might be able to give him a call when needed. So, yeah. Unsurprisingly, some good work from you. Have the main seven back together again, and you pair them with these giants of the industry of Clancy Brown and Dana Delaney and everybody else. So yeah, and Corey Burton. Not surprising that they came out with a really strong episode that didn't rely on a whole lot of dialogue. So I think that speaks even more to it. So for all those reasons, I ended up with a 10 out of 10 for mine. I don't know how I could give anything but a 10 out of 10. These guys and gals are just incredible.
Absolutely. Yeah. 10 out of 10 for me as well. If I didn't give it enough credit, the moment where the Flash is in the Speed Force and, Michael Rosenbaum, he's gone like very hippie new wave. It's a Speed Force. It's calling me home. And just like the fear and the panic in Maria Canales-Barrera's voice as Hawkgirl in that moment where she reaches into the portal and is just calling to him, I think is just great. And Michael Rosenbaum's exhausted nature after they do manage to pull him out of the portal is great too. So just absolutely perfect. Great job by everybody around. Not unexpectedly, perhaps.
There you go. All right, Liam. Well, that will begin to wrap things up here. So let's get our final scores for this final episode of the Cadmus arc. Totaling everything up with my scores, I end up with a strong 34 out of 40. What about you?
And I ended up just a little bit higher with a final score of 37 out of 40. Which does, in fact, push it into the top picks. Any episode that we have of 36 or higher goes into that section.
Yeah.
But yeah, we don't really need to talk like for every episode this month. We don't have to talk about rewatchability because it's the grand. Again, we have our literal epilogue, which we will cover sometime 50 years from now, whenever now is on this show. But for the main portion of this arc, this is the end. This is what it was all leading to, and it, as you said, it ties up not just knots from ties bows not on just what this show and the previous series of Justice League was working on, but even puts some bows on things from Superman and things like that. So a lot going on here. No choice. Double thumbs up for rewatchability here. It's what it was all leading to. So
it's required viewing if you're doing a DCAU watch. You cannot skip this episode. Mandatory watch. Enough said. All right, Liam. Well, that will begin to wrap us up for this week's episode. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Don't forget, we would love your support for the podcast. If you enjoy it, there's multiple ways to do so. First and foremost, subscribe to us on your favorite podcast app. If your favorite podcast app allows you to leave a review, leave us a 5-star review. That helps us out a lot. If you leave a review on Apple Podcasts and you decide to leave a little blurb, tweet or drop us a DM notifying. We don't always check those reviews every single week. Liam, we actually have our latest review that I would love to read to you right now. It is a 5-star review, courtesy of Zach Channing, and it says, "Excellent. This is the best," in all caps, "podcast out there for lovers of the DCAU. Cal and Liam have the best format, the best conversations. The pod is the highlight of my Saturday morning." Wow.
Oh,
so cool.
Thank you to Zach. We've interacted with Zach a little bit on socials as anyone can. Like to reach out to us, whether privately by DM or by leaving a comment or Xing us or whatever you call it these days. We love talking with you guys. Zach always has a great deal of feedback and always gives his own thoughts as well. So really appreciate, as we always say, we know that can be a hassle, but it does help us out when someone leaves a review. So many thanks to Zach for leaving that review.
Zach, drop us a DM this week, either in your Twitter or on Instagram. If you want to slide into those DMs, we have a little thank you gift for you as a shout out to you. So if you would like to join the ranks of Zach and hear your own review read here on the podcast and maybe receive a little thank you gift, do so. And send us a tweet or send us the DMs letting us know that you dropped the review, or if we discover it later on, we'll make sure to try and give you a shout out and let you know to come collect your little prize. Open to U.S. residents only. Sorry, guys, I'm not spending thousands of dollars to mail a little thank you gift out to you for leaving a review. But if you're in the continental U.S., feel free to leave a review. And we thank you for everybody that has taken. We're almost up to 30 reviews here, averaging at 4.8 stars. Yeah, that shout out to the coward that gave us a 1-star review but didn't tell us why they don't like us. Listen, if you're gonna leave a review saying that you don't like the podcast, at least tell us how we can improve, please.
You know, just to be clear, we will not read a 1-star review. We're only reading the 5-star, but we'll look at it. We're not going to read it on the show.
That's right.
We're not going to read it on the show if you give us 1 star, but we'll look at it.
That's right. We'll look at it. You're not getting a thank you gift also for leaving a 1-star review.
Correct.
5-star reviews only.
5s only.
That's right. You can also leave a 5-star review, no blurbs, but 5-star reviews on Spotify as well. And thank you so much for subscribing to us on whatever podcast app you listen to. That helps us out. Don't forget, as Leah mentioned, follow us on social media at DCAU Review, both on X/Twitter, formerly known as Twitter, and on Instagram. We get some great stuff that goes up there. Lots of good conversing between fans. Lots of exciting stuff. We are eagerly anticipating more news about Batman Cape Crusader. Feels like it could happen any day now that we'll get the information about where that's coming up. So that'll be an exciting time to talk about things other than the standard DCAU that we love so much. But lots of stuff. Liam's been talking about the latest Superman cartoon a lot, always talking comics. It's a great way to interact with us. It's one of our favorite things to do. So follow us and interact with us that way. Also, if you want to support the podcast, you can check out the show notes. There is a link to support the podcast directly with a monthly donation. We're about to lose one of our podcast sponsors because Spotify is changing the way that they do ads. Shout out to Spotify. So if you want to support us, we will greatly appreciate that. There's a link to do so. We have some lovely, generous people that support us, allow Liam and I to get a monthly coffee, get a cup of coffee here or there. That helps us out a lot. Thank you for those that donate your hard-earned dollars. But listen, we're not going to sit here and beg for your money. Times are hard. So just listening to the podcast is something that we greatly appreciate. So if you feel generous and you want to do that, the link is in the show notes, as is the link to the store if you want to get yourself a piece of merchandise to support the podcast that way. Liam, we are, as we mentioned, we've wrapped up season 2 of Justice League Unlimited here. We have 2 weeks left in this month of September. We got 5 Saturdays. So that means we know there's an Elseworlds on the horizon, but what are we doing next week with this strange gap? Are we going to start a new season? Are we switching shows? What's going on?
No, we're going to go to another tried and true old favorite for when we're looking to fill a gap in the schedule. And we don't have a necessarily relevant episode to put in there. We're gonna press pause on JLU for at least a little while here. Give us some time to breathe before we maybe start looking into that last season, or maybe create another character themed month or something to get back into it eventually. But next week we will stay in the Justice League family, so to speak, and we will be hitting up a character spotlight of one of the few remaining original 7 Justice Leaguers that has not gotten one yet. And that is Batman. Just kidding. That would take that's a 10-hour pot. You're gonna have to pay us to do that.
Batman character spotlight, volume 1 of 1,000.
Yeah, that's. Whew, I don't even know how we would begin to break down a Batman or a Superman one, but
you really have to take like Batman's interactions with one particular character or something. I don't know. Tweet us your ideas.
Yeah, if you have an idea of how we could possibly tackle the Batman or Superman, even Wonder Woman would be complicated, but at least she's only in like 2 shows. Like,
right.
But yes, we will be doing a spotlight on Martian Manhunter, J'onn J'onzz himself. That was something I was thinking about today. They never really call him Martian Manhunter in this show, so maybe we'll look into that. I want to know if they ever actually say the words Martian Manhunter in this show. I feel like I knew the answer at one point, but I can't remember at the moment. So we're going to be looking at every single season 1 of Justice League appearance of J'onn next week, as well as we always do with these character spotlights. We'll look at some tie-in comics. We'll look at some toys and then statues maybe, and then also as always, maybe we'll look at the very early comic book origins of the character as well. So lots to look forward to. I always love doing those character spotlights. So looking forward to that for next week.
It'll also give you an opportunity to talk about Carl Lumbly and him getting robbed of an award. So another reason to bring that
right.
That irritating factoid.
I will be back on my soapbox next week. Don't you worry.
All right, we're getting it prepared. We'll reinforce it just in case you get hopping mad. Oh, it's going to be a blast though. Can't wait to spotlight the Martian Manhunter next week, J'onn J'onzz. But until then, I'm Cal.
And I'm Liam.
And we will talk to you on the next episode of the DCAU Review.
Bye-bye.